All right, welcome everybody. I think a few more people are popping in and joining us, but we're so happy to have you here. Hopefully we might have a couple people trickle in as well as we get going. My name's Maddie Gregory. I'm a career counselor over at the Cawley Career Education Center. Here in partnership with the Department of Art and Art History. Emily has been a fantastic partner, gathering all of our wonderful panelists and putting this show on for us. And then we have Nicoletta Pierdu from the Georgetown Humanities Initiative with us as well. So we're here just to talk through careers in art and art history and give an idea of what that can look like as we kind of navigate through graduation, or maybe we're not there quite yet. And so learning a little bit about what we can do up until that point. But just getting started, Nicoletta is going to walk us through a little bit about the Humanities Round Tables and our partnership with the Career Center and the Humanities Initiative, just briefly.
Thank you, Maddie. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nicoletta Pierdu, and I'm the inaugural director of the Georgetown Humanities Initiative. This initiative, which is rather recent, promotes interdisciplinary collaborations across departments for research, pedagogy, and public-facing projects that demonstrate the enduring value of the humanities for the understanding of the human condition. And we support both the traditional humanistic scholarship and digital work, initiatives for the wider community, but also arts and performances that engage with the critical issues of our time, from racial and social justice to climate and the environment, migration, just to name a few. And we want to engage students as much as possible in our initiatives, not just as spectators, but as vital partners. And among the collaborative opportunities for and with students, we have this excellent example of this partnership with the Cawley Career Center. Together, we plan to offer many other roundtables on career options and other topics that can help us highlight connections between the academic and the professional world. So I really want to thank Madison Gregory, the fabulous mastermind of this career panel series in the humanities, and Emily Offeldish for her precious help in setting up an event on career options in the domain of visual arts, which for us is very important. So thank you very much. I look forward to our conversation this afternoon.
Awesome, thank you. So we have four wonderful panelists here today. Mary, Shawn, Nora, and Tay. Mary, would you like to just introduce yourself first and tell us just a little bit about you and I guess a bit about your life after Georgetown? What brought you, I guess, to the space where you are now?
Sure, I'm used to going first because of alphabetically. Yeah, so my name is Mary. I'm from Southern California, and I grew up kind of below LA, and then moved to DC to do my undergrad degree at Georgetown. And I went in as I think I declared an art history major before I went in, took a few Italian classes, and then finally just got to the point where I liked it so much that I ended up doing a double major in art history and Italian. And that was fantastic because it was interdisciplinary, as Nicoletta was talking about. Like, I was really able to kind of study art history in Italian, which was incredible. And I wrote my thesis in Italian, but about futurism, kind of women in the art historical movement in Italy, kind of at the beginning of the 20th century. So after Georgetown, I did my master's in art business at Sotheby's Institute of Art in London, and I just decided, didn't really know what I wanted to do with my degree, but I wanted to be in the arts. And so I decided just to move to London for a year, which was hilarious because I'm here now. And yeah, so I just did it because I had no idea what was out there. And the whole point of me doing it was to just see. So I met a lot of incredible people, and yeah, I decided that I wanted the exposure of working in an auction house. So I spent a year applying to jobs, and I applied to so many jobs, it was ridiculous. And then I got one, and it was to the point where my manager now had already interviewed me so many times for other jobs that she was like, I'm finally going to give you a job so you can just stop annoying me. So that's a bit about me, and I'll let everyone talk now.
Thank you, Mary. Welcome, Shawn. Could you just tell us a little bit about you and maybe what you studied and what your interests were at Georgetown, and then where you are now?
Sure, I'm happy to. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. I entered Georgetown actually in the the School of Languages and Linguistics, majoring in French language and with a concentration in pre-med. And actually I was double minoring at that point as well in psychology and Italian language. And over the course of my time there, my interests changed. Second semester, senior year, I picked up a double major, studio art was the second major, because there was one class in particular I wanted to take, and and they wouldn't let, this is a directed studies class, and they wouldn't let someone who wasn't a major take the class. So I added the major to take that class. Out of Georgetown, I went to work not knowing what I wanted to do. I had no idea what I wanted to do as a career. But I took a job at a gallery in upstate New York, literally answering a door, fetching coffee and donuts, and cleaning out the basement. And the trade-off was that the owner of the gallery would teach me a bit about the paintings. And the man who was restoring our things wasn't actually working on our art. And the owner of the gallery asked if I would go and sit in that man's studio just to take up space, and in doing that, theoretically motivate him to work on our paintings. And over time, he'd asked me for a hand on larger pictures. I got really interested in the materials he was using, and in researching those materials, it led me to look at graduate programs to learn how to do it. I never thought of it even then as a career. It was just something I was interested in learning more about. And one thing led to another, and finishing grad school, I was like, actually, I could do this as a career, I suppose. So I applied to some fellowships and wound up at the Met, and I've been there ever since.
Awesome. Thanks, Shawn. Welcome, Nora. Can you tell us a little bit about you and what you're up to now?
I'd be so happy to. Hi, my name is Nora. Thank you all so much for having me. It's a real pleasure. And yeah, so I graduated in 2014 from Georgetown. I also did not enter knowing that I would study art history, but I fell in love with art, taking classes in the department. And as a junior, I took a course with Professor Al Akers in the history of prints, which was a real turning point for me, because I fell in love with prints and printmaking, which is now what I'm hoping to specialize in. But I was pretty sure when I graduated that I wasn't ready yet for whatever the next step was. And I'd always worked in education. I had always worked with kids. So I spent 3 years as an early childhood teacher in DC after graduating, which I loved. I would be a preschool teacher again in a heartbeat. After 3 years, I decided to go to get my master's from the program at Williams College, which is co-hosted by the Clark Art Institute. I had a fantastic experience, and I'm happy to talk more about why terminal master's programs are such wonderful places. While I was there, I worked as a graduate intern in the Study Center for Works on Paper at the Clark. And after graduating, I applied for a curatorial assistantship and got that job, which was also a dream come true. And after being a curatorial assistant for a year, I am now at the very end of my first year of my PhD program, which feels a little surreal because, like you all know, school over Zoom is a bit strange. But I could not feel more fortunate to have my job every day be to get up and read and write and think seriously about works of art and the way that they operate in the world.
Awesome. Thank you, Nora. And last but not least, Tay, how are you? Tell us a little bit about you.
Hey, how are you? Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be speaking with you today. Hello, I'm Tae Turner. I graduated from the the Art and Museum Studies Master's Program in 2019. But before I came to Georgetown, I actually studied at Christopher Newport University for undergrad. And I majored in studio art, but double minored in museum studies and art history. So I kind of got a mix of, all of the art related things there while I was there. First and foremost, I was a visual artist, but like most of you have said, I wasn't really sure where I would take that degree post-graduate school. But during my time in undergrad, I worked as an intern for the student art gallery there. And I just fell in love with, being able to meet all these really cool artists and helping to set up their exhibitions. I absolutely love that. And also working as an intern, I was able to, work intimately with the professors of the art department and the art history department as well. And so that's also where my love for art history came about. And so fast forward a little bit, I attended Georgetown for their museum studies program. And during that time, I held internships. My first internship was actually at the Freer-Sackler Gallery in the education program, in the education department, excuse me. From there, I basically did like almost that entire side of the mall a little bit. I went to the Hirshhorn Museum, and then from there I went to American Indian, and so I kind of did like the whole side. All of that was in the education department as well. Then from that point, after graduating, I got the opportunity for a curator of collections position here at the Hampton University Museum. My experience with this particular museum is I've been interning for them off and on since basically high school. And so, this was kind of like a collection that I was, really invested in, and just in general, as an art historian, visual artist, and curator, I was always interested in amplifying African American and Native American voices as well. And so that's where I am today.
Awesome. Thanks, Tay. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen here so that we can start our conversation. And Nicoletta, if you want to start us off with our first question.
Sure, thank you. It's fascinating to hear already the wide spectrum of experiences and current careers. This question will focus a little bit more on your career path and what led you to the role you're in today. For instance, what drew you to this type of work as a student yourself? In part, you have already answered with the introductory question, but feel free to expand about this.
Sure, I think if I can go. I think I wanted to do something quite fast-paced. Just thinking about I really love the academic side of Georgetown and the art world, but I think it kind of meshed with my personality to do something that's very fast-paced. So it's more my personality that informed maybe the area that I went into ultimately of the arts, if that makes sense.
Great. I'll carry on. What I loved about conservation, I didn't realize this obviously until after I graduated, but I had interest in art and science. And while I don't need a lot of science to do what I do, it's really technical in that way. And so I love the creative, the problem solving aspect of it, the scientific aspect of it, the art, being surrounded by the art. It's hands-on. I love using my hands, and I literally, in respect, just immediate gratification. I physically fix things, and I see things change in real time. That all felt good to me. That's what drew me to it.
I think, well, there's definitely a lot of different reasons, but I think the first that comes to mind is I'm really interested in how we can initiate conversations as a society, as a culture, within communities. And for me, the power of art history and the pleasure of it is I sort of see it as like almost not declaring a major, like not having to choose, because if you, for me, when I do art history, I'm thinking about religion, I'm thinking about economics, I'm thinking about literature, I'm thinking about culture. So I think for me, what draws me to art history every day is the question of how we gather around objects and the ways that objects can provide a foundation for important conversations that we need to have and for stories that are not always being told. What first captured my imagination about printmaking was sitting in this history of prints class, which maybe some of you here have taken, I don't know. But realizing that there was this whole world of traditions around making that was completely unfamiliar to me. And that just got me so excited. And I think what drives me often in my work is what is not being told. What's the story? What is the perspective? What is the information that is not being necessarily drawn to the surface? And how can I or we together create situations where people can be exposed to new ways of thinking, and I can be exposed to new ways of thinking? That really makes me excited.
Yeah, so for me, I think it was really rooted in just my love of art in general, and as a visual artist first and foremost. My very first time visiting an art museum was actually in, I believe it was my senior year of high school, and it was a field trip to the Hampton University Museum by chance, and just seeing all of the artists here in particular, it like really like opened my mind up to like what's possible, especially because this was like my first time seeing Black artists amplified in this way. And so I was kind of, I guess, like trying to search out that experience that I had in the museum of, being educated and inspired. And I think when I fell upon the idea of being a curator, both in undergraduate school and at Georgetown, I kind of saw it as I see curators similar to like film directors or film producers, in the sense that that's a visual medium that's supposed to be really accessible, and I believe that art done right should be accessible and should be able to educate and inspire. And so, as a curator, I think we're able to create these opportunities and create these exhibitions and programs that not only can amplify these voices and these histories that are often, not told, but we can bring people into that space and, spark conversation and spark inspiration. And so I think that's where it was grounded for me.
That's awesome. Thank you all so much. So leaning into that a little bit, what types of experiences or skills would you say are essential to get into your field of work? I know we talked a little bit about like having the personality or being drawn to certain pieces, or Shawn, I know you talked a little bit about networking and kind of just being in the right room, right? So just curious about what types of experiences and skills feel essential to getting to where you are today, and maybe how can Georgetown students position themselves to be successful in this business? And Mary, if you want to start us off again, please jump in.
Sure. I know I alluded to it before, but probably just perseverance, I would say. I think, yeah, the arts is definitely you have to be very committed to wanting to work in it, I would say, from my experience. But it definitely is worth it, and you shouldn't give up. And I remember, I always tell people this because I can see how disheartened they get with, a lot of rejections. And this was even before COVID, but yeah, when I received an offer for my job, I had just been rejected at my full-time job. I had just been rejected for an internship at another auction house. So it's like a complete, it doesn't really make that much sense. You just have to keep trying, essentially, I think is the best thing that I could recommend to people. And I think like with networking, I would say be really intentional with who you connect with. Tell people what you want, not from them necessarily, but in general. And I think it's really surprising how much people will want to help you. But obviously you need to know what you want first. So try as many internships as you possibly can. Talk to as many people, not even do, because I did loads of internships, when I was at Georgetown, and that actually could have just been conversations with people really over coffee. So try and just figure out what you want to do by having all these experiences, and then be really intentional with how you network and reach out to people and ask them to help you, and don't give up.
For me, what was essential, on one end, what was essential were two relationships. One was like a student-teacher relationship. I had a professor, an art teacher at Georgetown, who really believed in me and kept coming back at me, asking me about whether or not I wanted to add studio art as a major. And had it not been for him, there's not a chance that I'd be doing what I'm doing now. It would not have happened. There's no way that I even would have gotten into art as a career. And then the relationship I had more like a kind of a teacher, like an intern, professional relationship with that conservator who invited me to give him a hand on things and really showed me what the job was about. On my own side of it, what was essential was really just being led by my gut and how I chose what I wanted to do. Honestly, I never, like, all the big choices I made around my career path, none of them had to do with planning anything or thinking, okay, this is the next right step for me. Each of them were just visceral reactions of things that I wanted to do for my own interest. And it led me here. So I guess I'd say just following my gut, it was the main thing.
I love that. That's awesome. It sounds like you kind of like prototyped your life a little bit out of like gaining experiences here, leaning into the thing that feels the best, and then kind of moving forward from there. That's really cool.
Yeah. Had I thought about it or tried to calculate it, honestly, I overthink things, and when I do that, I talk myself out of things. And had I thought about this at any step of the way, I would have certainly talked myself out of it, to be fully honest. So I'm grateful for just not allowing myself to get in my head about it.
That's great. Nora, what about you?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I would echo what's been already said. Just very few things are a straight line. Nobody goes from point A to point B without all kinds of digressions. And actually, I feel like those digressions have been integral. Like when I say that being a preschool teacher is something I would do tomorrow, that's not a lie. It's actually true. And that's because I learned more being a teacher than I've learned doing anything in my life. And there were people, friends of mine, family members, who were really looking out for me, who were like, if you want to go to grad school, like, don't be a preschool teacher. Like, that's going to label you, especially as a woman, in certain kinds of ways. And I'm really glad I ignored them, because it was exactly what I wanted, what I needed. And I feel so fortunate to have had those experiences. So I'm not saying all of you should go and become preschool teachers, but I think that being open to the possibility that practicing the sort of constellation of skills of the things that you love is not always going to look like one thing, and being aware that what you're doing today won't necessarily be what you're doing tomorrow, and that's okay. I think giving yourself room to have experiences and make mistakes and learn from people who have a wide range of skills can only make you better. And then the only other thing I would just say is, like, when I introduced myself, I said all these things about like jobs I've had, okay? But you should know that there's a list like 10 times as long of things that I applied for that I was rejected from. And I say that not to discourage you, but just to tell you that it is completely normal to hear no, not to make that like okay. I think that there's bigger conversations about the art world and about compensation for internships that maybe this isn't the forum to have, but everyone gets rejections, and I just want to normalize that. And I want that to be normalized for you, because for me, at first I was like, oh my gosh, maybe this isn't the right thing for me because I'm being told no. And I'm so thankful that I had friends and collaborators and supervisors who were like, that's not true. Like, you should keep trying. You should apply again. You should wait another year. And if I had given up on myself, I definitely wouldn't be in the position I am. But that wasn't something that I did alone through like willpower. That was something that I had a wonderful community of people who loved me and believed in me before I sort of even knew what I wanted to do. So
Yeah, so I would also echo everything that's been said. But I would also say that it's really important to always be open to learning more. For me, one of the reasons I absolutely fell in love with art history was because I felt like, you know, from that first art history course, I feel like I opened like the Pandora's box as like a visual artist, because I felt like when, you know, you get kind of like a sense of what past artists have done, for example, you kind of contextualize that into what's happening today. I think you also kind of put yourself in that context, and again, just thinking of like a visual artist, you kind of you kind of develop your own skills, and you kind of think of yourself as, you know, like, if I was a part of this art lineage, where would I fit in? You know, what does my voice add to the larger conversation? So I think always be open to learning more, and you know, trying to further your own experiences and your own skills as well. Also, again, the internship things is really, really big, because as most of us already know, a lot of job opportunities can come up from like past internships. You know, for me, you know, this was a past internship that I've had, and you know, someone reached out to me about it, because, you know, they were like, they already know my work ethic, they already know that I'm familiar with the collection, they know, you know, my experience with Georgetown, and so, you know, let's contact him. And so I think internships is a very, really, really big way, and I think it's also like the easiest way to network. Because, for example, when I was working at the Freer Sackler Gallery, although it was in the education department, and you know, the museum was Asian art, and I love Asian art, but that wasn't what I wanted to focus on. I was able to talk with some of the curators in the museum, and I was able to you know, see how they conducted their tours and how they developed their programs and, you know, the exhibitions. And so just gaining that, like, you know, side experience was really valuable to me, and I'm really thankful for that. So internships, 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 really, really good.
That's such a good point, Tay. I just want to say, because I remember I did an internship that I absolutely hated. And when I think about the internship that gave me the most, it was actually that one, because I found out that I never wanted to work in a gallery ever again. And I'm like, thank God I knew that right from the start because of that internship. And I didn't have to go into the kind of and go into a job in that sphere.
Fascinating. Now, we want to know more about your typical work week. Can you describe a typical work week, and or even on a daily basis? What is your typical day, and how does it vary day from day? Anything you can tell us about that?
Sure, I can start. So I work in the valuations department, and we issue valuations for clients with modern and contemporary collections all throughout Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. So basically how it works is that the entire auction house globally has one system that records every single artwork that we've ever valued. And it's all in this database. So all of the specialists who are in contact with the clients about wanting to kind of sell their collections, or maybe the client needs an insurance valuation, or they want to get a loan against their Picasso or something, then they will ask us to kind of pull up a record of the client's collection and what we've priced it in, you know, what price we gave the work in 1997. And so we look that up, we provide the information in our department, and then we kind of are able to assist with like business getting kind of activities. So it's really amazing. I get to talk to specialists in almost every department in the company all over the world, because obviously people who collect contemporary art also like to collect a bit of kind of everything. So you have to check up with books and manuscripts about this one manuscript, and kind of the provenance that they need to be able to sell it. And then you have prints, and you have to make sure, you have to ask the client kind of what is the edition number that affects the price. Can I get better photos? All of this. So it's been really fascinating, and it's been like a great exposure to both the company and the art world. But yeah, day to day, it's a lot of like fighting fires and kind of doing things very urgently. But it's not just art, it's like a lot of project management, managing people's expectations, saying no to Yeah, so it's just generally, I think it's good to have those skills, data management, things like that. So it's not just so specifically art history, really.
For me, I'd say no 2 weeks are the same. I'm a conservator, so I restore paintings. I treat paintings in the studio, sitting at an easel. One day I could be removing an old varnish, another day filling in, retouching, recreating paint that's been lost. Checking painting every time a painting comes into, or anytime any artwork at all goes into the museum or out. It requires a condition check, so we track the condition of things and if anything changes. So I'll do condition checks throughout the week. I'm going to be working an exhibition like Alice Neal. We just opened up. That was about 2.5 weeks of just being in the galleries, checking paintings. Every now and then one gets to the museum, might belong to another collection, but if there's a bit of lifting paint and it's not going to be stable over the course of if I don't think it's going to be stable over the duration of the exhibition or before it travels again, then I'll treat that to stabilize it. A bit of research and writing. One painting in the studio right now by Adolf Gottlieb, and I've literally had it in the studio for about 1.5 years, because I get pulled away to do so many other things, but also it's something that it's a particular kind of treatment, and in order to make sure that what I want to do is actually safe for the paint, because our picture is in such good condition, I can't take a sample. So it's a lot of collaboration as well. Like there's no ego in conservation or like a lot of art history. Like it's like a global collaboration in many ways. Like your resources for other institutions and their resources for us in return. So really it's a bit of everything, and I only just scratched the surface of that, but that gives you a general idea.
So I guess I'll speak to being a graduate student specifically. I'm really eager to, I feel like I personally didn't even know what to expect going into a doctoral program. So I'm super eager to demystify graduate school to the degree that I can. And I'm happy to leave my email and answer any questions you have. No such thing as a silly question. But yeah, my day-to-day life, I spend the vast majority of my time preparing for classes. So I'm taking a course load of 5 seminars, which meet for 3.5 hours once a week. So I spend a lot of time reading. And now as the semester is coming to a close, I'm spending a lot of time writing final papers and doing research. I'm writing on 3 very different topics for my 3 research papers. So I guess it's a lot of me managing my own time, figuring out, blocking off time, setting boundaries. And I'm also on top of my coursework. I'm currently research assistanting. I'm research assisting my advisor, who's giving a series of lectures at the National Gallery this spring, which if you're interested, they're online and they're pretty great. So that is actually really lovely because I sort of am able to do my stuff and then I work on her stuff. So it actually ends up being this nice rhythm where I'll maybe spend 2 to 3 hours after I get up doing email, getting my day organized, and doing my own work. And then I'll turn to her stuff in the afternoon. But I work a lot, but it's work that I love. So it doesn't feel too difficult.
So because we are a rather small staff at a pretty large institution, we all wear multiple hats at our museum. I think probably some of the most consistent things I do throughout the week, research. I am always in a book. I am always conducting research, whether it's for an exhibition that we have planning or programs that we have planned. I think since August, I've definitely had to lean in a lot more on our programming and implementing the virtual program in particular. Because again, going back to that diverse background, resume, I was able to take a digital media course when I was in undergrad, and so I was able to learn how to use Adobe Photoshop and InDesign, and how to edit movies, and so that definitely came into play when during the pandemic we were close to the public, and we have to create a lot of virtual content, and so most of the time when we're filming or editing something, that's what I'm doing. So a lot of that. Since August, I created my very own curator's talk. It's kind of like a it's like a regular curator's talk, but it's heavily based off of audience participation, and so it's really interactive. And a lot of the content that I include in those sessions are pre-recorded videos, but also trying to think of different ways to bring the audience into like the actual conversation and make it a little bit more accessible. And so I started planning that in August, and it premiered in October, the first session. And the second session actually was last Friday. And so I had my biggest audience that time. It was about 40 something people, I believe, altogether. And so I was really excited about that. And so like a lot of my preparation is, based off of the next iteration of that session and trying to keep it, exciting for the next group. Again, a lot of, I think another pretty common thing that I've been doing since I've been here is, again, overseeing the collection, making sure all of our records are up to date. And again, being a rather large institution, that's an ongoing project. I foresee that happening for quite some time. But also just making sure the collection is in a safe museum environment. If I have to condition reports, making sure I suggest a certain object that may need conservation in the future to our director and things like that. And so just trying to, I guess, kind of like babysit our art collection a little bit. But yeah, it's never the same work week. There's always something. I also want to make sure people know, like, I think there's this misunderstanding that museums during the pandemic were kind of like slowed down and the workload kind of slowed down, but no, we've been really busy. So yeah, it's a lot of different hats that we're wearing here specifically.
Awesome. It sounds like you all have a lot of variety in your day-to-days and your weeks to weeks, which is really cool, to just be able to kind of put your hands in a lot of different pots. Gonna lean into a question that Nora spoke to a little bit already, but this idea that the career is not always linear, right? So majoring in art or art history doesn't necessarily mean our first job is going to be our dream job. And so I was hoping that we could speak a little bit to how you all navigated this. Tell us a little bit about your first job right after graduation, or your first experience in wherever that was, after, whether that was if you went right into graduate school or if you worked a little bit afterward. But just tell us a little bit about that experience and how you navigated some of those early roles in your career. And I'm curious, how did you explore careers that may not have lined up perfectly with your original version of, like, this is what I want to do? So that was a lot of words. I'll drop that question into the chat so that we can see it. But pretty much, how did you navigate this like non-linear career space?
I can talk to that. I think it's been interesting to hear people kind of this theme of trying to combine, what you're passionate about into a mix that works for you. And I think from my academic background, I love writing, and definitely my first job. I mean, it's hard because obviously everyone does so many internships that it's hard to kind of pinpoint what your first job is. But my first job out of my master's degree was like a job that I created myself, because it was just like doing the hustle. Basically, I was in London and I couldn't work. I needed to do something that was going to help me network with people, that was going to keep me engaged while I was applying for jobs. So I asked one of my professors, who had this kind of art market analytics company, if he would ever consider having like an editorial part of his website. And he said, that's fine. I'll, pay you whatever, £50 an article that you write and put on the site. And so I did that for a year, basically. And that was amazing because it was like a job that I had to create for myself, basically. But it was amazing because like through sharing the articles, I could, connect with a lot of people that I would have never met, just sitting in my house applying to jobs. So that was really fascinating. But it is interesting how kind of your passions can combine in ways that you kind of never could foresee. The other thing I will say is that I feel like being in the arts, I'm so passionate about art, and there are so many different things to do in the art world that I think it's, if I ever, get sick of my job, I feel like there are so many other things that I could do. So I think in terms of like the non-linear idea around careers in the arts, for me, there's just so many different things. And really, if you want to change direction, all you have to do is be able to convince the right person that that's the right move for you and that it's going to work. And yeah, there's nothing stopping you really.
In respect to my first job after Georgetown, I mentioned briefly that I really had no clue what I wanted to do, and I had a friendship with an owner of a gallery in upstate New York, and I just happened to ask him if there's anything I could do for him, and again, not knowing that would at all lead to a career. I had no expectation that it would. And he let me come in and, as I said, literally open the door and close the door when the buzzer rang, when people came to the gallery because they worked with the closed door. Spent months in just a grimy, mold infested basement cleaning that out, fetching coffee. It was really menial work, but it enabled me to communicate with Nick, the gallery owner, about the art, which was a real treat. So I was just humble, and then that led to another interaction with the conservator, which led to something else and something else. So I say my career path was rather linear, not by design, by accident. Just embracing opportunities when they felt right. So that's the only thing I would say. Just embrace opportunities that feel right, and in retrospect, everything will seem like it fits.
I was really served. I worked all through Georgetown. I always had jobs because I needed to, and I was really served by those experiences. I had an internship at the Human Rights Campaign, which taught me so much about the nonprofit world. I worked at Hoya Kids, the early childhood center on campus. I worked for the RHO. I worked for facilities. Like I had all kinds of jobs. I worked for a gallery in Georgetown for a while. And these experiences, they were just all really, really helpful and informative in many different ways. But I actually think, because other people have spoken so well about first jobs and experiences, I would actually say that doing a terminal master's was one of the best decisions I could have possibly made for myself. And I say that because it seems counterintuitive, but I had classmates and teachers and peers in this environment where we were all just like really focused on art and on thinking about like these sort of big questions for ourselves. And particularly the Williams program, although there are many other phenomenal terminal master's programs in art history, has a real emphasis on not over specializing. So you're kind of given this time to play. And the program that I did required that you have an internship. They didn't have any say in what you did. You could do whatever you wanted to do, but you had to do something. And I think the combination of being given time to study, but also time to work and to think about those two things as related, that the stuff I was doing in seminar actually had a lot to do with my work as an intern in the study center, that these things were actually really closely connected, but also to interact with people who had a wide range of roles in the arts. It really opened my eyes to all the possibilities that there are. And I really can't recommend that enough. I think there's a temptation, I have felt it myself, to if you think that what you want is a PhD, to immediately apply to PhD programs. And for some people, that's absolutely the right decision. But the opportunity for me to spend 2 years with a group of people in this closely knit community, it taught me so much about myself and so much about all of these different kinds of roles in a way that was pre-professional in the best sense of the word, I guess I would say, like actually encouraging you to get in touch with the things that you love and how you can give that to the world. So that's kind of my 2 cents, school.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why I'm such a big advocate for internships is because I've been fortunate enough for both of the positions that I've had after graduate school came as a result from those internships. So right after graduating in 2019, I was contacted by Freer Sackler about the opportunity there, and it was from the same mentor that I had during the internship. And again, because they had already known my work ethic, and I had known a little bit about the job itself, they were like, "Oh well, let's contact Tay." And so for that, in that sense, I think again, that connection that you develop, whether it's during your time at Georgetown or your time during internships, is really, really vital. Also, so after graduating, I was at Freer Sackler and was there until the following February. And then again, something similar happened where I was contacted by a previous internship that I had. They told me about this opportunity coming up, and because they had already known that I had been there for years as an intern, they wanted to make sure I knew about the opportunity. And so again, having that relationship is really important. And I think, again, I personally feel like internships, you can develop those type of relationships easier in internships, especially, because, just thinking of the internships available in the DC area, and, you being at Georgetown, a lot of them are familiar with the programs there. And so a lot of them are saying, "Oh, well, I used to have a Georgetown intern, a few years ago." And so they are familiar with the programs there. And so, Georgetown has a little bit of weight, in the area. And so I think you should take advantage of that. Also, being able to, having access to recent alumni. I was able to talk to a few alumni from the program the year before. And so they were giving me advice on, how to navigate this space. I was really nervous about, what comes after, what comes next. And so I think, reaching out to fellow alumni of the programs, whether you're in art, studio art history, or museum studies, I think that's pretty important as well, because I know for myself, and I can speak for everyone else, I'm always willing and able to, help out and, pass the torch in a sense. So internships, alumni, faculty members, just use all those relationships will help you out, I believe.
Excellent advice. Thank you, everybody. Let's see whether the students in the audience have any questions for all of you, or a specific question for some of you, or one particular profession. So please, whoever is available and eager to ask, please.
So thank you guys so much. This has been really great. I'm graduating in about 4 weeks now, so I am desperately on the job hunt right now. And I just kind of wonder what you guys would recommend for standing out. All of these jobs are super competitive, and they're usually only asking for a cover letter, more networking, just how to get an edge on some of the other people applying, I guess.
You're talking about like an art history kind of position. I can't speak directly to that, but at least in conservation, anytime anyone's, regularly we get people reaching out who want to meet, want to stop in and say hello. And it's kind of understood that they're probably going to be applying at some point soon for something. But when we have time, we'll meet with them and, answer questions, get to know them. And then it might not be for something, 2 weeks from now, but even if it's, 8 months from now, or 6 months from now, or a year from now, we know who they are. And if they leave a good impression, then that just, that goes a long way. Personality, a lot of, at least in my profession, well, for me personally, there are a lot of other, when I was first hired by the Met, I went there as a fellow, and the next year was hired. I was no better than necessarily than anyone else. I'm sure there were other people out there who were as skilled as I was or better, but the personality fit. We got along well in the studio. It was the right balance. So just allowing people to see who you are, and feel who you are as a person, and whether or not you'd be good to interact with. Having that in the background of their mind goes a long way. So what I would say wouldn't necessarily help you for tomorrow, but reach out to people. Don't be afraid to do that. Ask if you can have a FaceTime chat, or stop in and meet them, or send a thank you card, like these things, it sounds kind of ridiculous maybe, but those little things go a long way, and, you know, be bold in that way, like politely. So, you know, we get some people reaching out who feel like they're trying to sell us something. That's a big turnoff, but, you know, just with the purpose of to get to know you as a person, I'd say.
The perspective of interviewing candidates for roles, I think, like, you know, if you have hundreds of people that apply and then you talk to 12 people, I think it's actually really helpful to put yourself in the position of the person interviewing you. So obviously for you, it's such a big thing, and you know, it's very kind of, you know, you're thinking about what you're going to say and all of this, but I completely agree about the personality thing, because things that make you stand out aren't always things that are on your resume. Obviously your resume is the first thing that people look at, and it could lead to an interview, but I think being personable, having an engaging discussion with your interviewer, these are all things, you know, like, this sounds horrible, but like making them enjoy the interview, because it can be horrible to interview so many people. It's exhausting. So I also think, like, there are ways to be creative outside of the bounds of the CV and cover letter type grind. I know, like, there's this one girl who is a specialist in Middle Eastern contemporary art, and there's not a lot of Middle Eastern contemporary art that's even in existence. So you kind of had to ask, how are you qualified in this? And she linked to a website that she had published all of her writing, all of her interview with artists, kind of. So all she had to do was put the URL, and the person interviewing her could see, this is what you know, this is how you're qualified for this job. And I thought it was just such a creative thing to do. So yeah, I think be bold, personality, and think outside of the box, definitely.
I'll chime in. I mean, first of all, congratulations. That's so exciting. And I know that it's a really stressful time. So even more congrats. Like, going to school in a pandemic, I empathize so much. And please forgive me, you probably know some of this, so I don't mean to seem condescending, but I read a lot of cover letters for my friends, and I used to read them when I worked at the Clark. And there's 3 things that I just are like critical. So again, I apologize if you may already know this and you'll be like, oh my gosh. But the first is, like, do your research about the institution. You get cover letters all the time that are just about the person and show that they have no knowledge of the place. And when I would get letters at the Clark that were like, the Clark Art Institute is unique because it's both a research institution and a museum, I was always like, oh, good. Like, you know, because actually your argument is so much more convincing. And so even those like 5 minutes poking around in the website makes your letter just seem so much more informed, because there are definitely applicants who will just copy and paste the same thing, and you can tell immediately when you're reading that. And then specific anecdotes are always better. So like a paper that you wrote or a project that you worked on and really making it come to life. Those are the things that always stick with me when I read a really good cover letter. I'm like, oh yeah, this person wrote, you know, their paper on Keita Kollwitz, like whatever, you know. And then the other thing is, like, they're going to have your resume. So don't just restate your resume. It's really, I read a lot of cover letters that did that. And again, I apologize. You may already know like all of this and you're like, you've got it in spades, but just in case, those are the kind of the things that always make the letters really stand out to me. And also like the directness of the applicant, which I think Mary sort of phrased as bold. Like, don't be afraid to take up space in your letter and to be like really honest about the things that you care about and the things that you want, because you're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. Like, you're assessing them out to see, do I want to work with you? And so it's a test for them as much as it is for you. And so you shouldn't be afraid to lay your cards on the table. I know I wrote a lot of bad cover letters where I was like way too afraid to be honest about the things that I cared about. And I would just encourage you to be bold, be direct.
I see Alexandra with her hand up. So maybe, yeah, please.
Hi, thank you so much. I know I have my camera off. I just got the vaccine, so I was trying to, you know, have as much energy for my question as possible. But yeah, no. So I'm a weird case. So I'm going to try to make my question as least me individualized as possible. But I kind of know what I'd like to do, but I'm also aware that what I'd like to do is highly specific. And I'm working on a cover letter right now, and I'm looking at internships and jobs that I could possibly pick up this summer and then over the course of the next year and a half. And I'm wondering, how specific to my job should I look? How specific should I be when seeking out which jobs I'd like to apply to? Because I don't want to get too off track, but I also want to I don't want to ignore amazing experiences just because they aren't as aligned with what I'd like to do as I might like. But I'm just wondering what experience you have in trying to prioritize your career field and trying to make sure that you're investing your time towards what you want to do, your dream job sort of thing, while also not turning down opportunities and also picking up important skills and connections along the way.
I would, if I can start, for me, I might reach out to them and say what you want to do and ask what the possibility would be to do that, so you have an idea going into it. We get, every year we assess fellowship applications, and sometimes, well, quite often actually, they'll say what they want to do as a project, thinking that they need to have one to apply for our department. And sometimes they pigeonhole themselves to such a degree that they don't leave space for us to say, okay, well, we like you a lot and we'd love to have you come, but it sounds like you don't want to be here, to do what we might want you to do. So it's a total fair question, legitimate question. If any one of them reached out to us before and said, these are the things I'm really passionate about, but I also want to gain experience and, these other, learn from you and bring what I have, and find, what would work, what would, have that conversation with them ahead of time, and own it that way. Because if you just start out with your cover letter saying, I want to do this, I would say just don't, unless that's really all you want to do, just know that they can only base their assessment of you on what you say. And I would say reach out to them first and get clear on, what might be possible. Because they might say, oh, well, that's not possible, but, this or this is, or, okay, that's possible. And, but there are many options. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, no, totally. Thank you. Yeah, and I know that the place I'm trying to get to has a lot of jobs underneath it that are very internship category friendly, like video production and script writing. And so I'm able to kind of pick out those and hope that those will contribute to my application for the dream job later on. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's such a good question, because I think everyone has a dream job, but you actually need a job. So I think that is such a good question. And I would say I just took the first job I got, I was, offered, and it worked out perfectly. But I think it's always a trade-off, because you don't want to lose you don't want to lose sight of what you really want to do. But reality does kind of get in the way sometimes, and at a certain point you're like, I just need a job. But I think as long as you are intentional about what job you're taking, and realizing, this isn't my dream job, it's my first job, but I'm getting out of it what I want to get out of it, and I'm making the right connections, and being purposeful in that way. I think that's completely valid. I'm quite early on in my career, and I know why I took my job, what I like about it, and when I'm done with it and I'm ready to move on, I'll have gotten everything that I wanted out of it. So I think being really self-guided in that way is really important. And I think in your cover letter you can say that you have a wide range of interests, but that's something that you specifically really like. And so if you phrase it in a way saying, I'm open to other opportunities, but I'm also have this very specific interest, I don't think you could exclude yourself from other opportunities. But yeah, that's a great question.
So I so appreciate these questions, but also so value everybody's time. So I know we've gone over a little bit so far, but just want to push pause here and say thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you so much to the Department of Art and Art History. Thank you so much to Nicoletta. This has been wonderful. So if the panelists feel comfortable, please put your emails, if you're comfortable, in the chat for additional questions that might come through. If not, no worries at all. Emily and I can try to fend off some questions as well. So But yes, thank you all again for joining us. Thank you to our panelists. Really, really, really appreciate you all being here.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
It was a
Thank
pleasure
you.
to all of
Thank
you.
you.
It was so nice to meet everyone on the panel, by
Yeah.
the way.
We should
And
keep
let me say thank you again from the department to everybody. It's so much wisdom here. It almost made me want to be a student again. Only almost.
Only
But
almost.
really, I wish I had heard something like this when I was a senior in college. Just great.